Welcome to the Reading Rift. I'm Lydia, and this week we are interviewing dark romance author A. Ann Davis. And reminder, this is an adult podcast. This book is an adult book, so adult themes, adult content, adult language. And so this episode will be spoiler free. So if you haven't read any of A. Ann Davis's books, then this is a great opportunity to maybe see if they're meant for you. And if you have read her books, then this will give you more insight into what goes on behind the scenes of writing a dark romance and into your favorite author. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to kind of pick your brain because I'm new to dark romance. So like my resume is Haunting Adeline. Like I've read that series, and then Lights Out is on my bookshelf, and I read Alchemized, which is kind of like a fantasy dark romance.
I have
But
that
so
one
yeah, I'm
over
very
here.
new.
Yeah, right over there. I need to read it still. I have it, but it's
It is
intimidating.
like
It's so big.
it's so big, but it is that's one of my favorite books I've ever read. That was like beautiful. That book was that was beautiful.
Yeah, it came highly
But okay,
recommended.
so highly recommended. Okay, so I first want to talk about kind of what got you into reading, and let's like go to your younger years. So this is you as a child, okay? Who were your author idols, or maybe books that shaped you growing up?
My writing as a child was honestly writing lyrics and poems. So that's kind of where the writing side came in on it. And I remember like I would walk home from school and I'm sure like the neighbors thought I was some crazy mental kid because I would just sing random songs that would pop in my head. Not like real songs, like songs that were just made up in my head on the way home. And not just like humming them, I would sing them as I walked home.
Mhm.
Um, but that's really how my writing started. So I don't really know what influenced me as a kid trying to think back that far. So I'm about to be 34, so it's been
Well,
a
I'm
while.
kind of curious about the books that you read growing up. Like for me, I always read Judy B. Jones, Magic Tree House, Harry Potter. Like a lot of those books were my like intro. Actually, the book that's like my preteen-hood is Hunger Games. Like I was a big Hunger Games fan. Um, and yeah, so do you have any books that come to your mind when you think about your
Um,
first initial, oh, I love reading?
I definitely was actually more into mystery and fantasy growing up, so definitely the Harry Potter, yeah, I said that right. And Judy B. Jones was actually like
Mhm.
phenomenal. I don't know if I actually ever read The Hunger Games. I watched the movies, but I don't know if I actually read the books because the
Well, you
movies
have an
came out before I
opportunity.
knew they were
Yeah.
books. So I felt like going back and reading
Mm,
them now would just kind of like mess it up because the books are always
maybe.
so
I
much
have
better
heard
than the
that
movies.
they are. But I actually love the books. I think Hunger Games did pretty good at staying pretty true to the plot and the characters and everything. But they've got a new movie coming out end of this year. So maybe it's your time to like read up
Maybe
and catch up to the new Hunger Games movie
backtrack.
that's coming out in September.
Yeah, I didn't
um,
even know that was
so
coming out.
growing up, I know. Well, I'm a big Hunger Games fan, so I'm really into it. So I knew it was coming. But growing up, do you remember maybe a? It sounds like maybe it could be like a music teacher, but do you have any like adult figures in your life growing up that really, I guess, promoted reading, or maybe put the idea in your head of, oh, maybe I could like writing?
I did have an English teacher that promoted more reading because I'm dyslexic and whatever the one is called for the numbers. Um, and I've
They
got
always
like
make the word so hard. It's like, no,
I
I
know.
struggle. Why I can't even say this word.
Well, I thought it was all the same, and then someone corrected me a couple years ago, and they're like, "No, the one with numbers is a different word." And I'm like, "Oh, well, to me, same thing, whatever." Get them all mixed up. And then I've got really
Yeah.
bad ADHD, so they're like, "Well, find books that really interest you and just read. Read to yourself. Don't read for anything else." Because I could read a book to the teacher, and they would ask me a question, and I would not know the answer. Like I
Mhm.
just couldn't do it. But I could read the book so they knew I read it and then I could tell them about the book. But if they asked me a question, I don't know. Like I would just shut down. So we had to find different ways for
Yeah.
me to do those things. And they're like, stop stressing out about it and just get into it. But yeah, my music
Mm-hmm.
teacher was a huge influence on me on just stepping out of my comfort zone and doing things. Um, but for some reason, like just writing lyrics and singing was more my thing when I was younger than reading, actually. Like I love to read. I've always loved to read. But when it came to writing, it those are my go-to. It was writing poems, turning them into lyrics.
That's awesome. I even in your book, I could tell that you were a music lover because you had a lot of songs that were tied to really important, like, emotional moments to the characters. So I was like, I wonder what's the significance behind the music, but that makes sense that you always have had, like, a deep connection to lyrics. Yeah. So what kinda getting more into your adult years of what was the first dark romance book you remember reading and being like, "Oh, I really
Hunting and
like
Hunted
this."
Adeline was my first, like, dark romance, um, and that really kinda was like, "Oh, I like this." There was so much
Mhm.
trauma that happens in those books, but it was also like, he came for her. He's like, I'm going to get her. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna find her." And I don't know, I just fell in love with dark romance at that point, and I went down a rabbit hole. And actually, my book was supposed to be a contemporary book, and it just took a turn on its own, and now it's a dark romance.
Okay, so when I was reading it, I was like, "Okay, like, lawyer office romance." Okay, 'cause I didn't really read the description of the book. So I, like, downloaded and started reading it, and I'm like, "Office romance, cool. Oh, shoot. Then things start going crazy in this book, and it is no longer in my head lawyer office romance." But yeah, so I also my first dark romance was the Hunting Adeline, and that like the first book was like, whoa, that was crazy. But then book two, when like more even more darker themes start to come up, it's like,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I didn't know that there was literature like this out there that kind of explored these topics. And we're going to talk about that later in this episode of kind of talking about why are people drawn to dark romance and maybe what criticisms do people have of dark romance. So what I want to know is what do you recommend? So like what book would you recommend to a reader who says, I want to try a dark romance book, but I'm not sure where to like test the waters of if it's for me.
I would highly, highly recommend starting with something like Lights Out or Butcher and Blackbird, because they're not super heavy, but they're still dark. I think they're more like rom-com themed, where like it's similar to mine is it's got rom-com themes to it, but it's very heavy in spots and still dark. But it's not like too dark that would be
Mhm.
overwhelming for a
That's
brand
what
new
I've heard.
person.
I've heard that Lights Out is has a lot of comedy in it, so that was recommended to me, in my early journey, which was, like, last year is when I kind of started reading a lot, but, so it's on my bookshelf, and I really wanna read it, especially because I
So
just
good.
found out that, like, the Netflix show was in the works, so I gotta, like, get in the loop about what's
Yes.
happening there. Okay, so now we're gonna transition more into your writing. So, what are some of the first things you remember writing? It sounds like lyrics and poems. And when was the transition to, okay, I'm gonna write a whole book? Because that is a totally different type of writing than writing a short song or a
Very,
poem.
very different. Really the writing started, I had some, like, personal things that kinda came up, and I ended up in therapy, um, and again, like, therapy's great, but find the one that works with you, one that you really connect with, because they can be a great therapist, but if you don't connect with them, it can make things worse. So, I found one that was just phenomenal, and she recommended journaling. So that's really where that started, and then I noticed that it became like a journal and then it became more. And then I just was like, my ADHD, I was like, okay, well, this is no longer about me. What if this happened? So then I just started writing like little clips, I guess. of a book. It was never like a book. Um, and some people doodle in their journals. I just wrote little clips of random things that pop in my head.
I definitely relate to that. I've always been a big journaler my whole life, and I have, like, this idea for a book. It's, like, in my head that I'm not in a time to, like, actually write a book, but I do just, like, write it in my journal, these little ideas that I'm like, "Oh, this plot point is so good." I put it in my
Yes.
book, and I, like, kinda, like, save it for whenever I am out of young motherhood or whatever, and I have more time to invest in that. But yeah, I love journaling as well, and um I love that you kind of what I've heard from a lot of our authors that I talk to is they're writing their book, whatever genre, whatever it is, was like the best form of therapy that they
Really is.
ever found. So they're like, I love therapy, but also writing my book healed me in a way that nothing else could have. What part of writing a book specifically was the most challenging to you?
Finding the blurb. Like, you write the book and then you have to come up with this blurb, which is a sum of the book, but it got to be something that's going to entice the person to want to actually open it up and read it. And I'm like, okay, how can I condense that in just like this little bit? That was the hardest part. Like, I would have spots that would get heavy and I would have to step away and then I'd come back, but I really think the hardest part was that.
I've heard that from other authors too. And my husband's a writer. He's written a book that he's trying to go down the traditional publishing path. So he's trying to
Mhm.
query and as we're working together, I'm trying to help him with his like query letters and stuff. I realize it's so hard to put like a fantasy book on summary in 3 paragraphs. And it's like,
I couldn't
but
imagine
this
doing
is
it with
important, but I
fantasy.
only have like 150 words. Yeah. So it is hard to summarize it. And you're like, just trust me, it's good. Like, can I just tell you that? So I want to know who was the first person you told, I think I'm going to write a book? And then how was their reaction to that?
I think it was my mom. Um, I don't really know how that came about. Just came up and she's like, "Well, do it." Um, I mean, worst case scenario, nobody buys it. Just do it. And I think that was like the best advice that anyone
Mhm.
gave me, and it's advice that I give everybody else. Just do it. You know, if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
Do this for you, and who knows, one of your books could completely take off.
Yeah. It is scary. It's so scary because you like write it, you put your soul into it, and then rejection is like
It's like your
so
baby.
hard. But I've heard from a lot of writers is that like once they get it out, it kind of has like a freeing aspect to it of like, you
It's
know
like a
what?
weight off your chest. You're like,
Maybe people won't like it, but it feels good to have it out there so that maybe someone could. That's a better chance than if you didn't ever put it out. I also want to know is who was the first person that you let read one of your spicy scenes?
my mom. She's actually one of my beta readers, so she's read everything. She's probably one of my actual like my
That is
biggest
awesome.
supporters. She's um she's actually trying to write her own book, but it's like really dark. She's into like the gory stuff, so like my torture scene, she's like, you need to more of this, and I'm like, that's more up your alley though. Like, I think what I have is fine.
Yeah.
So
That's so cool. What a
she's
cool
constantly like,
mom.
more blood, more gore, and but yeah, she's read all of it. She's read the kitchen scene. She's read the gym scene from book 2. And those get pretty spicy.
Yeah, that's so fun that your mom is kind of like, actually, it needs to be more intense. Like you're here, I need you here. um, yeah, that's awesome. Cause like my husband, he writes romanticy. So his books have some spice in it. And I remember when he first started writing, I had never read a book with smut in it or spice. So I was like, honey, you can't they don't put that in a book.
You can't do
But
that.
I was so young and naive at the time, but then I read Fourth Wing and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you need to spice it up what you put in your book." I was like,
Up your game,
I
man.
didn't know, I'm sorry, but now I know. And now I know I was a prude, but now I know. So I've been educated. Um, okay, so I want to talk about publishing and get your insight into this kind of like mystery. Like you don't really know anything until you do it, and it's really scary to a lot of aspiring authors. Um, and so I want to know, what was the process like for you to decide traditional publishing versus self-publishing? If traditional was ever like a thought for you, or if you knew you wanted to self-publish from the beginning.
I was such an avid reader, as you can tell. I had already like known about like indie authors, and I'm like, I really want that control of like when I release it, how I release it, and maybe one day, if they want to pick me up down the road, because I know sometimes like when you pop off, they'll reach out to you and be like, you know what, I want to pick you up and whatnot. Then I would be down for it, but I just felt like it would be easier to start the process on my own just because querying can be so stressful. And I watched several other authors try to go through that process. And I didn't want to scare myself away from getting it out in the world because I know a lot of those rejections can hurt. And like you said earlier, this is your soul into it. This is your baby. You put so much blood, sweat, and tears in, maybe not blood, but I put a lot of tears into my books. So I'm just like, I really don't want the rejection from a giant publishing house that just told me it's not for us. Um, so I just knew that I just was going to start indie and hopefully one day become traditional. But if not, that's fine because there's a lot of indie authors that are just out here killing it.
That is so true. I definitely am more new to the indie author books, but I've been reading kind of just solely indie author books the past couple of months, and there, I think, like a misconception I used to have, and I apologized for having it, but I used to think that an indie book meant that it didn't get picked up by a traditional publisher, and so it was just like gonna maybe not be as good. But now I know that people choose to do indie like as their first choice, and that their books sometimes are way better than books that do get picked up traditionally. So that was an important misconception that I had to learn. But I want to know, what misconceptions did you have about publishing before you started?
I didn't know anything about publishing before I started. I reached out to so many different authors, and I was so scared to do that. I'm like, they're gonna be like, I'm an author. I don't need to talk to you. And it was not a single one has ever done that, and it's been phenomenal. Um, because I had no idea. I didn't know what KDP was and how to get my book on Amazon or how to do anything. So I talked to so many different authors, and they're like, oh, yeah, you do this, this, and this. And if it wasn't for reaching out to them and having I don't know if I can say that word, the goal to do it, um, I probably would be sitting here with a couple books under my belt and not published.
I will attest that I agree. The author community, and especially the indie author community, they are so supportive of other authors. Authors are like, "Oh, I'll tell you everything. Here's all the mistakes I made, so you don't have to do it." And like, here's what like everyone we've talked to has been so helpful with giving us advice, because my husband's hopefully trying to get published in the next year or two, and just like, yeah, I think a misconception, another one I had, was that people wouldn't be like willing to share information, but it definitely has been the opposite. And I'm really grateful for all the kind people that I've run into through and met through book talk and bookstagram and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So for you, what's been the most challenging part of being an indie author?
For me specifically, it's time. I'm a full-time employee. I'm a full-time student. I am trying to finish my psychology degree. I'm a full-time mom of 3 kids. So having the time is probably the hardest part. There's been a lot of sleepless nights I've given myself a lot of deadlines, which is completely on me. But I get excited. I get so excited about this. I mean, I've already got my audiobooks contracted out, so those have dates that everything has to be turned in by. And I'm like, okay, now I got a deadline. I got to do it. And then I got excited and I signed up for all these book signing events for this year. And I'm like, okay, I need to slow down. And my husband's like, okay, that's enough signings. Don't agree to any more. um,
I yeah, it's so hard to find time because it's like there's unlimited opportunities to
yes.
become a successful author, but you have to like because I understand I have kids myself. Like sometimes you just have to make prioritizing choices, and you feel a little bit of like I wish I could do everything, but
Yes.
I can't. This is the max I can do without like eating into other important aspects. But I get it. I get because my husband's writing a book, but I'm really into like my podcast that I do and learning about books. And but sometimes I have to remind myself, like, okay, I can only do so much during nap time. That's what I got. That's what I do. Max it out, and then be grateful for what I could do, and then switch back to mom
Absolutely.
mode. Props to you for also having a job and going back to school and being a mom. That is crazy.
Well,
Good job. How do you
also,
do
I'm
that?
so scared to say no to an opportunity like the signings or the audiobooks because you don't know what's going to be that one thing that pops you off. Because you get out there and the right person gets your books and loves your books and then talks about your books, then everyone's going to know about it. But you don't know who
Yeah.
that person's going to be or what that one thing's going to be. So in my brain, I was like, sign up for all the events because that's networking. It's going to be worth it. Um, Sign up for all the things. Don't say no to nothing. And that's kind of where my brain is at. And I'm so glad I have someone that's like supporting me and he's like, I get it. It's going to be worth it, but don't sign up for any more signings for this year. I have 9.
Yeah.
So,
I know, that's so I totally understand as a mom, like, even 1, it's like you're dedicating time to be away from and it sounds like you have a young kid too, so, like,
yes.
so hard to be away from a young toddler baby aged baby that, like, needs you literally all the time. So, yeah, I totally understand. You never know who you're gonna talk to that could be I don't know if you've read Quicksilver, but Callie
Yes.
Hart, it used to wrote that book. It used to not be traditionally published. She actually had written a ton of books. I stalked her Amazon. She had written a ton of romance books before Quicksilver. Like, I'm gonna say like 20. And it wasn't until she sent Quicksilver out to like as many influencers as she could, and they started talking about it, that it like blew up in 2024 or 2025. It was like dominated the internet. At least my algorithm was obsessed with it. So you just never know. And that's every author's dream is to
Well,
everyone
that's
to
like
know who they are.
lights out. She was going to stop
Mm,
writing and because her books weren't taking off. Lights Out went crazy. And now she has a series deal. And it's like, don't give up, keep going. You don't know what book's going to do it for you. You don't know what event's going to do it for you. You don't know what audiobook's going to do it for you. Just do it.
yep, and that's a lot of pressure, but it is so true. Just do it. You believed in yourself when you wrote the book. And so, at least at one point, I know there's a lot of doubt going into writing a book. My husband's always like, "Oh, but is
I
this? Oh,
had
I don't know." And then
so much
and but
self-doubt. I was
so at
probably
some
my
point you just gotta
biggest
be like,
bully
"Go."
trying to get that book out because I was like, you're not good enough. No one's going to like it. No one's going to read it. And then it was just like, you know what? No, shut up. Just do it. Who cares if nobody likes it? You like it. You did this.
Mhm.
You published a flippin' book. There's so many people who will write a book and never publish it, or someone who wants to do it and then doesn't finish it. So just do it. That's a huge milestone all on
Just
its
do
own.
it. Mhm. Yeah, finishing a book, huge, and then actually putting it out, huge, and then just believe in yourself. At one point you believed it, so just you have to remind yourself, like, "Wait, get out of here, self-doubt."
Yeah. And
Okay,
then
so
even hit that
now I wanna
button and be
talk
like,
about
yum.
your books. Yeah, I did that. Okay, now I wanna talk about your book. So, you've written a book, you've published a book. Now I wanna kind of do a little some teasers about the book so people haven't heard of you before, they don't know about your book. So you have written you've published 1 series, correct? Or
I have one series out, so I got two published, which it'll have a third, but it's going to be the storyline stopped with two. It's going to be Tyler and Josh's perspective from beginning to end. So it could essentially be read in tandem. So this year, book 3 will come out, but you could stop at book 2 because that's where the story ends. So book 1 and 2 are done and they are out. And I have them. They're out.
okay, yeah.
Um,
So here are your books, On the
yeah.
Edge, and the second one was a little blurry, On the Edge of Revenge, is that what it says?
Yep, The Edge of Revenge and On the Edge.
Okay, and I have read book 1, and it was a roller coaster. Oh my goodness, I was, like, in bed at night, it was way too late, and I'm like, "I just gotta know what's going on, like, what the heck?" And then I was like, shoot, I need to download book 2." But so, let us know, what is your elevator pitch to readers? So they're like, "What's your book about?" What do you tell people?
The way I explain it, and I don't know if this is even a thing, but I've created it. If it's not, I'll claim it. I call it a reverse mafia because it's not the mafia that's falling in love. They're actually trying to rip the mafia apart from the inside out. So Kelsey goes from so book 1 follows Kelsey and Landon. I guess I should have started with that. But she pretty much has like love at first sight with Landon and then finds him in a compromising position. And she's like, you know what? I'm not getting my heart broke. Screw this. And doesn't give him a chance to explain. She just dips out. She ends up getting talked into going to the bar, meets Devin. We hate Devin. We don't like Devin. And he turns out to be, it's like fake dating that kind of turns into a little bit more. But there's no like real love and emotion there. 4 years later, he turns out to be like a really trashy person. And I don't really think it'd be a spoiler to say there's like domestic violence involved. She ends up in the hospital. Landon's like, I'm going to take care of you. He takes her home. And then like chaos ensues. And it just really goes from there. That's kind of where the roller coaster starts. I did have a review that said it was a slow burn. And I'm like, did you read it? Because we banging it out in the prologue in both book 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So,
Not Oburn. Nope. That's crazy. But yeah, did you read the same book that I wrote? Okay, so if readers enjoyed these 3 books, then they will enjoy your book.
um, I would have to say it's probably a good mix of Lights Out, Butcher and Blackbird, and a little bit of like Haunting Adeline. Not that it's the same, but some of like the heavy stuff and the funny stuff and the love story itself kind of combined out of each. I think if you enjoy any of those books that you would like mine.
I would agree. What emotional experience do you want your readers to walk away with? What are you promising them that they are going to feel and experience when they read this book?
Everything. I actually had last month, I was book of the month for Indie Books Monthly. And in there, they have a Discord where people can like talk to us, ask us questions and things like that. And she's like, put all these different emojis. And she goes, this is everything that I felt reading this book. And it was just literally like all the emotions. And I tell people it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. I want you to feel everything. I want you to laugh. I want you to cry. I want you to hurt. But I also want you to feel that love and laugh and just everything.
Yep. That is what happened when I read that book. I like wasn't prepared when I started it. And so I was like, "Oh, cute. Oh, shoot, compromising position. What's going to happen here?" And then I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness." And I remember there's points when things would come up and I like put my phone down because I was reading it on my phone. I was like, "I need to take a breather. What is going on here?" But it was so fun to, to read. Um and coming off of I had just read, like, a hockey romance, like, a contemporary. It was, like, really lighthearted, so it was it was, like, a fun switch. Um, what type of reader is your book for? So, I guess, who did you write this book for?
Honestly, I wrote it for myself. Um, but I think the best reader would be someone who likes all those things, someone who wants to laugh and cry and really feel it. Um, if you don't like dark romance or want to like dip your toes in it, I think this is a mild way to dip your toe in it. I would still recommend probably Lights Out. I think Lights Out is a little lighter because there's some pretty heavy stuff talked about. Um, I think like the middle of the book, but I think someone who's interested in dark romance, someone who likes a lot of spice, and has an open mind would be like the ideal reader. Because especially that kitchen scene, if you don't got an open mind, you may want to skip
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, that was great to read. I think also somebody that wants to not know what's gonna happen. Like, I feel like a lot of times we read books and it's like, "Okay, this is the trope. This is what's gonna happen." I can kinda predict things. I was not predicting things in this book, and I'm usually pretty good at, like,
Good.
"Oh, I know this is, like, what's gonna happen." But I was like, "What? Excuse me?" I was, like, on that roller coaster not seeing what was ahead of me. So, if you're kind of like, "Hmm, I can predict books all the time," maybe this could be fun because you could maybe be surprised for once. So, okay,
Yeah, let's find
so
new readers.
now I wanna talk. Yeah. Okay, so now I wanna talk about dark romance as a genre from your expertise of being a dark romance author. And I just have some questions about kind of like why do people love this genre or why do people hate this genre? And and I just kind of want to get your thoughts because I've thought about it a lot because I've started getting into dark romance end of last year and I just have seen a lot of hate online and then I've also seen like the dark romance book girlies like band together and like
Oh, yeah.
support everybody, you know? So my
There
first question
there's
is go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say there's definitely, like, you either love it or hate it.
Yep. So, my first question is dark romance often receives criticism. So, what do you think people misunderstand the most about the genre? So, if someone says, I don't understand why anyone would want to read that, how would you explain your appeal to why people like it?
I think people forget that it's fiction. We're not saying that we want someone to use their knife, you know? Um, Because in reality, I don't think that that would be too pleasing. It's fiction. But also, a lot of the things that are happening in these books, even for readers, even if they didn't really go through it, they may have went through something similar or whatever. It can be healing for both the writer and the reader. And then for some people, it's thrilling, it's different, it's exciting. There's action, there's moving, it's not the normal. Well, he came in on a horse and, "Oh, that hat did something for me," which don't get me wrong, I love a cowboy romance, so let me just put that out there. But there's so much, like, moving parts in a dark romance, if that makes sense.
hmm I think, like, when I think about dark romance, I think about that in real life, there are dark parts of humanity. And
Yes.
uh part of art, so creating books or music or like drawing or anything is how you explore complicated parts about reality. And so when I think about dark romance and people kind of have their criticisms about it, my thoughts are it's a really safe way to explore real dark themes that are part of humanity in a way that is healing and educational and like opens the mind up to things that maybe you're not aware of. Like it can help a person learn a lot about sympathy or about reality of a something that they don't know or if they do know it, then like you said, it can be really healing to know like there's representation or there's there's other people that understand maybe what they've gone through. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so dark romance holds a pretty good chunk of the romance world. At least my social media is like ever since I got into Alchemize, which came out last fall, my social media has been like, "Oh, you like that? Let me show you this, or let me show you this." So, why do you think readers are drawn to stories that explore these darker sides of romance and love?
That's a really good question. For me specifically, it was just something different, something to get me, and it's kind of like fantasy, something that takes you out of this world and you're mentally living that. Like most people, when they're reading that, that's them in the book in a way. Um, so really, just kind of takes you out of reality, and you're living this exciting, thrilling life. And then you have this one person who would literally just burn the entire world down for you. And then you're over here just swooning. You're like, but would my husband like go like murder this guy and put his hand in the box for me? um
Mhm. Yeah,
that I mean that's just my thought. I mean, I'm sure there's like millions of reasons why people veer that direction.
I agree. I feel like it's something different, and it's also, like, opens my mind to new ideas sometimes. Um, but I think so in your series, you touch a lot on I think this is a great thing that I don't ever see in books, is you literally touched on therapy in your book, and obviously your book well, if you haven't read it, read I don't know if you have warnings or whatever, but
Yes.
there's a lot of trauma in the book. So, the main character is supported by her friends to go to therapy at some point, and I thought that was great to include. Why was it important for you to show realistic trauma responses, and you really went into her mental state of trying to break through some trauma thought processes that were in her head, um, and so but why was it important for you to show that as well as kind of show the healing aspect for your main character?
Therapy has been like a really big thing in my life. And then of course, like I said, I'm a psychology student. So the way the brain works is so fascinating to me, and it's so weird like how everything goes together. And then everyone's trauma responses are so different. So it's hard to pinpoint down like what one person's going to go through, because someone's going to be like, well, I had a similar experience and I didn't act like this. No two people are going to necessarily have the same outcome, because some people, when
Mhm.
they go through those things, they become hypersexual, and some people shut down. They don't want to be touched, they don't want to be looked at. So Kelsey kind of went through a I want to but I can't moment. And so she's trying to break out of that shell. And then her therapist is like, "Okay, so you're at a spot where you want to actually attempt. You're finally ready for that step. Why don't you try BDSM? Because you're in control. You can stop it." Where everything that she went through, she couldn't. She did not have any control. So she was
Mhm.
putting her in a spot where she knew that she had that control in a safe environment with people she trusted.
And that's actually because I mean, I read in your bio that you are getting your degree in psychology, but knowing that after reading the book, it actually makes kind of a little bit of sense of how you were able to kind of work through the mental thought processes of the characters so well. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, so I really think the biggest criticism that I have ever heard about from dark romance is that it kind of romanticizes traumatic experiences or sexual assault or abuse. And I really think that there's a difference between like romanticizing trauma and then exploring it in a creative outlet. So, how do you personally as a writer navigate that line when you're needing to write themes like rape, trauma, violence, and you feel like kind of a responsibility as an author to represent it well. How do you kind of navigate that criticism that people give?
I think regardless of what you do in life, someone's going to criticize you. Someone's going to hate what you're doing. Um, you just got to take that with a grain of salt. But I have seen where people are like, "Well, you write dark romance, and so you should be fine with me touching you." And no, that hasn't happened to me, thankfully. But I have seen where it has happened to other authors and their PAs. And well, if you're okay with this, then you're okay with me doing these things. No, that's not what we're saying at all. We're not saying that we're into it. We're not saying we're not into it. You know, some of the things we write, we may be, and some of it we may not. But again, it's fiction. Um, Stories come to us. What happens in a book, we may have a whole idea of what we're going to write, and then as we're writing it, it changes. But there's such a harsh line of people that are just hateful about dark romance, and then I don't I don't know if it's just they're like, okay, well, let me test the boundaries because some people are going to these events and they are touching these dark romance authors and they're models. Um, and I don't want to say any names, but I have talked to one of those authors, and that's scary that some of them are now taking bodyguards or they're not even going to events. They shouldn't have to do that. Just because we write something dark doesn't mean we want that done to us.
Yeah, that would definitely be very people just sometimes don't think. What do you think it is about the dark romance themes that feel really emotionally satisfying to the reader that they're not getting in just a regular romance plotline?
I think it's the red flags. They're like, oh, I can fix him. And then he's willing to just like burn everything down. He's willing to take out anyone who's coming your way. And then in a way, like they kind of fix him, or I don't know if they really fix him, but they soften him up enough where he's like this teddy bear at the end of the book and he's cuddling with her. And I mean, I've read some pitch black books where he's like this awful, awful character and he's not supposed to have any redeeming qualities, yet he cuddles her in the bed at night when she's having night terrors. Dude, you're softening up a little bit. That seems a little redeeming to me.
I know. I think what I love about the dark romance genre is the kind of the character arcs for both the male main character and the female main character. So typically it's like the male main character kind of does a lot of the I'm gonna burn the world, which I love, but and then the female main character does a lot of like I'm gonna take control of my situation and like kind of heal and I'm gonna realize that I am safe in this relationship or whatever. And I love both of those story arcs of like watching someone heal and learning, even though I maybe haven't been through anything that these characters have been through. But I have learned last year that I can heal reading a fiction book. It doesn't have to be a self help book, but I can learn
Oh,
about my
yeah.
own mental health and my own womanhood and my own life just by reading fiction books. So that's what I love is watching characters figure out how they're gonna heal. And that's what's satisfying in dark romance is there's a lot of healing going
There's
on
so
because
much
there's a lot of
healing.
intense things that happen.
Healing and growing for
So
sure.
mhm, and that's so fun to watch because we can read it in a day, but in life, we sometimes lose hope about can I heal or can someone else heal or can this person become what I need them to be? But it gives us a little bit of hope of like, okay, maybe it could be possible. Um, so at its core, what do you think dark romance is really about?
I think you kind of nailed it on the head. I think a lot of it's about the healing and the growing, but also showing people that there's still so much love in even the darkest people. Everyone wants to be loved and cherished and cared for. Um, so even those recluse people that hide in the shadows and I'm Batman, they still want to be loved too. Sometimes they
Mhm.
just force it upon you.
And I'm gonna ask the same question, but I wanna kinda twist it up. At its core, what are your books actually about?
I think they truly did become more about, I'm gonna say, healing again, because they go through some crazy stuff, and I wanted to show that even though you go through all these dark things, you can still heal from it. And some people heal not going to therapy. I'm definitely not saying you have to go to therapy just because it worked for me, or that I'm a psychology student. You can find ways to heal outside of that too. And a lot of it can
Mhm,
be from writing a book, writing in your journal, writing a poem. Some people, it's art, it's music, it's these expressive forms. So with the trauma, I think it really is, how are they healing from this? It's not, here's trauma and
mhm.
then, oh, book's over.
Well, that would be something. What that's what a series does, is they're like,
Like,
"You don't get to
oh
know yet."
no, well,
But okay, so thank you for being here. That's kind of like the wrap up of what I wanted to talk to you about. So now I want to ask just a couple more closeout questions. But so first is, how can readers contact you, follow you, support you, get your books? So do you have like social medias, websites, whatever, that I can link in I cat that I can link in the description so people can, if they're interested, they can find you and find your book.
yeah. I'm mainly more active on TikTok. At uh Tatted Bama Girl 72. I do have one under A. N. Davis author, but it's my backup. So you could follow either one. But my main one is the at Tatted Bama Girl 72. And then I am trying to be more active on Instagram, which is also A. N. Davis author. Of course, I have Facebook, but I really don't post on there. Anything that gets posted is more shared from Instagram now that it has that option. Um,
Mhm.
and then, of course, on my TikTok, I have a link tree that takes you to everything.
Okay, awesome. So, what other books have you written, or what books do you have coming out that you can share with us? It sounds like there is going to be a book three. Is that coming out this
Mhm.
year, or what are your plans?
So, book 3 will be out this year. It's going to be a wide choose with Tyler, Josh, and April. April was introduced in book 1 as one of the girls that was saved. Um, and then I'm working on a dark rom com, which I'm like really excited about. It's more of a she kidnaps him, but poorly, and then has to call her best friend and be like, "Girl, I messed up. You need to come help me." And she's like, "What the heck did I get myself into?" So that one's like, how would it work if you and your best friend like just concocted this idea? But there's a bet between her and him. And she's like, "I bet I can do this." And he's like, "Yeah, right." So that's kind of how that started. So
That just sounds
that one's
so
being
funny.
so I'm really excited about that. That one should be out, I think June, because it's going to come out when the audiobook comes out. But I will have exclusive copies available. I'll be at Tempted by Fiction in Nashville and Feel the Heat in Chattanooga. So those will be exclusive to those two events prior to the actual release. Um, and then I am working on a sapphic wide shoes romance for Andy Eloise, Samantha Thomas, and Casey Hawthorne, I believe. Which they'll also turn around and narrate that book because they actually came up with the idea for that one. And they're like, "Someone write this," and I'm like, "I'm your girl." Um, which
Oh,
came
that's
along
so
with
exciting.
turning that into a sapphic series of I don't really know how I'm going to name that series, but it's like women in these quote male role themes. Like one's a mechanic, one's a contractor, one's going to be a welder. The first one for those three, she's a CEO. So I'm going to turn that into a little series, but they're all going to be standalones. So there's more in the
Awesome.
works, but that's kind of like the main things that are coming out first.
Yeah, just a little bit on the side of your job, school, and motherhood. So,
Yes.
what is
Almost
your
there.
long-term goal for your writing career? What are you hoping to your writing career to become?
I would love to pop off. I want to get my name out there, which is why I signed up for like so many things. I'm like, by the end of this year, people are gonna know my name. That's my goal. My in the year goal. I want people to be like, oh yeah, I've heard of An. I read her book or something. Obviously that's not everybody because not everyone's gonna read everyone's book, but I would love to pop off. Long term, I think it'd be cool to go traditional. But I'm also not, like, set on that. Um, I really would love to become a bestseller. Um, I know both books hit, I think they were number 11 and 12 on Amazon bestseller list at one point, so that was really cool, and I cried.
That is so cool. Yeah, I am so excited for you. I hope like all these things happen. You got some great things in the work. You got the work ethic that I think is what a lot of authors sometimes miss is it's like a business. Like you write the
It
book,
is.
super fun, but now you have to like run a business, like get people to read your book. So we'll follow along on your social medias and make sure and see if that happens for you. So my
Yes.
last question is what I ask every single author that I've interviewed, and it's why do you write?
I write for me. Um, it's such a therapeutic thing for me now. It's a great way to get out of the stress of the real world. And then now I have I would say a small fan base, and they kind of keep me going. They're like, okay, so and the next one, when's that happening? So which is really cool. Even though it's small, it's just like I don't know, it just brings so much joy. And but I
Mhm.
mean, really at the core of everything, I write for me.
I think that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and share your knowledge, and I hope that you can reach all your goals, and I'll be following along and
Yeah.
getting your next books as they come out, and so, yeah, thanks for talking with me, and best
Thanks
of
so
luck
much
with
for having
everything.
me. This was great. And
Yes.
definitely you're gonna have to go see what happens with Stacy in book 2.
Mhm. Yeah, it's already on my next to be read.